Good morning to you. Mark Sutton with HurricaneTrack.com here. It is Monday, the 27th of December, 2021, and this is the last of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion videos. Yeah, it's the off season, but it's the last one before next year. And wait until you see the one that I've got planned for January 3rd, 2022. Going to have a new format, kind of putting a fresh coat of paint on this whole Outlook and Discussion. Better production value. I'm going to be working on that in the next several days and have that ready to go for you on Monday the 3rd. So this is the last one of 2021. After I cut this video, I'm going to be hitting the road. I'll be telling you why in just a minute. But first, let's get on with it, shall we? We'll stop, first of all, taking a look at the global tropical cyclone map here from the University of Wisconsin site. A couple of areas of interest down here in the southern hemisphere, one over Australia, the other one out here to the south and west of Indonesia and vicinity. These are rainmakers, and yes, that can be a problem, but no organized tropical cyclone activity currently, although we did have a system here recently that affected parts of Australia, the northwest coast, and that had a little bit of a influence on the Southern Oscillation Index, which I'll show you in just a moment. But as we say, it's always hurricane season somewhere, just not in the northern hemisphere right now, or at least the western portions of the northern hemisphere. It can be over here in the Westpac, certainly pretty much any time of year, but especially the southern hemisphere this time of year. We do watch in and around Australia and parts of the maritime continent region down there. You never know, something could pop up. It's the summertime down there, just turned to summer, while we are in the just the beginning parts of the winter here in the northern hemisphere. All right, looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies. Yep, this is something important. We got to keep an eye on this. Not only for current weather and how this affects the globe, especially this pretty prominent La Niña that is in place, also the very warm Atlantic overall. I say very warm, some of it is very warm, like the northwest Atlantic, the Gulf of Mexico. These anomalies here, the departures from something, and in this case the departures from the average sea surface temperatures are pretty substantial still, especially in the northwest part of the Atlantic basin there in the Gulf of Mexico. And we got that La Niña, the La Niña holding on strong there across the equatorial Pacific, and not much change overall going forward as we get into the new year. I'll show you here in just a moment. We do have an updated CFS V2 forecast, and that's related to this guy right here, the old Long Paddock site out of the Queensland government. In Australia, they keep an eye on the pressure patterns down there. Why? Why do the Australians watch the SOI? Well, it has a lot to do with precipitation and how they do with their farming and their pasture and grazing and all that. They've been tracking this for many, many, many decades, if not longer. And so this is a really good metric here, the SOI, a measurement literally of the air pressure between Tahiti and Darwin. Darwin, of course, in Australia, Tahiti out there in the southwest Pacific. And when these numbers are strongly positive like they are now, especially that contributor there for today at plus 27, we typically are in a La Niña state. The air pressure is such that it's generally, the movement of wind is generally from east to west across the Pacific, the tropical Pacific there, the equatorial region. The trades are nice and strong when you have a fairly positive and consistently positive, strongly positive Southern Oscillation Index. And when it flips and it becomes negative for a good deal of time, usually 30, 90 days and beyond, then we kind of switch it around, and it's more of an El Nino type setup where we have more westerly winds coming across the tropical Pacific going against what we normally see with the easterly trades, and that leads to an abnormal warming. And then this map looks a lot different. This area through here would be warmer, and that's not what's happening, though. We got pretty good trades blowing through here. Generally speaking, the cold water out here relative to average is in place, and it looks to stay that way for the foreseeable future getting into early next year. In fact, we can see that reflected on the CFS V2. This updates every day, and what I did, I went ahead and just was thinking ahead here. I saved today's image, and then next week we revisit this once a week. Next week we will compare December 27th with January 3rd. It's hard to believe January 3rd is a week from today. Wow. It is. But yeah, and then we can just keep comparing these. I'll save these once a week. and eventually we could do an animation and all kinds of fun stuff with it. But notice, if you remember, and you were paying attention last week, the average there, as we got out towards between July and October, was just slightly above this little line right here. And in fact, let's just zoom in on this nice little GIF image here, and it'll help us to see. Is it GIF or GIF, like peanut butter? I always said GIF, like a GIF animation. Anyway, I digress. Look at that. It's right there. And I know this is just, kind of parsing out the little details here, but it is dead neutral by the heart of the hurricane season. The ensemble mean here of all the different models, the ensemble plots here. Most of the blue ones here in the middle are the most recent ones, and they're not quite as warm in the INSO 3.4 area as recent runs before that. So the blues are the most recent, and the reds are the later runs, and then you have some miscellaneous model runs in there. But the main thing is to pay attention to the mean here. This kind of breaks it down for you. And we should have a pretty decent warming, moderating trend coming out of the La Nina towards neutral by the time we get to hurricane season, at least according to this one particular plume of models, the CFS V2. It's pretty good overall. It's not horrible. It's not the best thing ever, and it's not the worst thing ever. It's a good guidepost. This is hard to do. Climate modeling is tough. All right, and we're trying to understand the dynamics of the subsurface and the surface of the equatorial Pacific. There are some buoys out there that are out of operation. The money's not there. They've just kind of gone by the wayside, if you will. A lot of problems. Somebody needs to win one of those billion-dollar lotteries and then crowdfund any kind of weather stuff that we want that's helpful. Not controlling the weather, but at least observing the weather. I see the makings of a bad movie there. But yes, the CFS V2 suggesting as we get into 2022, that rhymes, wonderful. I'm just pointing that out to you, that we will head up into a more neutral pattern, meaning that we will start to see this begin to moderate, and you'll see less blues in here. A few more yellows will start showing up as we gradually warm the Pacific back up to more normal levels or average. And then a big thing will be to see the Atlantic and how the Atlantic performs going forward. Yes, there are models that show that, and yes, we can talk about that as we get into next year. We don't want to do everything today. Got to leave something to talk about going down the road a piece. All right, so let's switch from anomalies. This would be anomalies. These are actual sea surface temperatures, and this continues to just really blow my mind here. This is the 26 degrees Celsius isotherm right in here, roughly. That's 25. There's 26. The bottom line is the Gulf of Mexico here running well above the long-term average. There's 27 running in the middle of it. That's 81 Fahrenheit, in case you're tracking at home, right? If you know your Celsius to Fahrenheit conversions. And there's a big area of 26 Celsius. That's about 80, roughly 80 degrees Fahrenheit, covering a good deal of the southwest Gulf of Mexico and parts of the Bay of Campeche down here. This is quite a bit warmer than it should be, so you've got a lot more moisture down here, a lot more energy available in the warm water for winter storms, for severe weather systems. You can get that moisture to kind of get pulled up through here and advect, or laterally or horizontally move. Advection is the horizontal movement of air where it goes this way. That's advection. Convection is where the air goes up. And in this case, when you got strong high pressure sitting off the east coast, that flow around that high pressure is clockwise, and you pump that Gulf moisture into the southeast and the deep south, and you can have stronger winter storms because of that added water vapor and added energy. And severe weather, which we saw there earlier in the month, that was so terrible for those tornadoes, a record-setting month of December tornado-wise by far. You know, it wasn't like a little bit above average. Yeah, we had a few more tornadoes. It was shattering the records, and a big part of that, I'm telling you, we talked about it weeks ago, even before we got to December, that this warm Gulf, undisturbed by any hurricanes at all in October, didn't have them this year. It was just a complete shutdown. We haven't had much Arctic air at all spilling into the Gulf, mixing it up, cooling it off. It's just gradually cooled down, kind of like letting your coffee sit there and just gradually cool off as opposed to stirring it or blowing across the top of it or whatever. Same thing. It's amazing, and now we're seeing it play into a lot of different problems related to the weather. There's ground fog, sea fog all through here along I-10 and the coastal ports down there, and the humidity, the high humidity values. It still gets cool at night, so you cool that air off, you get ground fog, sea fog, whatever. It's and then the severe weather, which we're going to talk about more in just a moment. All right, moving along, the water temperatures off the East Coast. Again, the gradient here, the difference in temperature over distance, not that steep. You're just not seeing it, especially up here in the far northwest Atlantic. A very, very shallow gradient. Yes, this water is cold, no doubt about it, but it is not nearly as cold as we would expect this time of year, and we can see that reflected in the anomalies map. Again, I'll draw your attention to right there. Very, very warm, right up against the coastline. Reds, dark reds, almost the black color in there, indicating on the legend down here, 3, 4, 5 Celsius above the long-term average. And again, that equates to, in real world temperatures, the actual temperatures, cold, yes, again, 17, 16, 13, whatever Celsius, not very warm, but not nearly as cold as we would expect this time of year. And that, too, will have a big impact on our winter storms when we finally get some Arctic air in the east. We have more warm water off the East Coast. That warm water will kind of get pulled in, so you're going to have less chances of snow overall. And then when we do get enough snow and the cold air to provide that snow, that's the mechanism there. And you got to have that cold air sufficiently deep in the atmosphere as well, not just at the surface. Then you get freezing rain or sleet, and who needs that? But when we do get a big snowstorm, I bet that we get a whopper, because there's just so much more water vapor available that when we finally get the deep cold air column in place, the Arctic air on a pretty big scale over here in the east, I bet that the snowstorms that we do get will overachieve. Wait, it's coming, especially as we get into January, probably mid-January through the month of February. All right, moving on along, looking at lower 48 weather. You can pretty much tell, ridging over here, easy to spot, trough out west, cold air, storminess, you name it, out west, and that's where it's going to remain for at least the foreseeable future. Pretty nice down in the Caribbean if you've got plans to go down and visit friends, family, relatives, vacation, whatever, COVID notwithstanding, and you can travel. Really, really nice down in the Caribbean right now. Good trade winds and no organized areas of deep convection at all. And so you'll have a great time down there and soak up those rays. Heck, you can just go down to Florida and do that right now, or even later in the week here in southeast North Carolina. It's going to be close to 80. But yeah, the Caribbean looking really nice right now. Jamaica as well. And even Central America, Cancun, Cozumel, the Pacific side as well, Mazatlan down to Zihuatanejo, etc. Very, very nice right now. This good time of year. All the storminess is either out west and or way up high in the northern latitudes. All right, so looking at the map real quick, this is an interesting patchwork. Even just looking at this, you can tell it must be a trough out west and a ridge over in the east, because this is where all the storminess is. All the watches, warnings, winter storm, blizzard, wind, all kinds of different advisories here. You just read the legend. That's what makes this an interesting map, is you got the legend. You got to read the legend, and the legend tells you what's up. That's called a thematic map, in case you didn't know. So lots of different things going on across the west. And we got a few cameras out there. I want to show you this live shot here out in Port Orchard in Washington. Sun's just starting to come up. They had some pretty good snows out there. This is a live shot from our good friend and supporter Chris Palmer, putting one of the mobile cameras, the same exact type of camera system that we use for hurricanes. He's got one sitting out there next to this little creek up in Port Orchard in Washington. And this is what it looked like in that area yesterday. This is a camera that he had a little farther away. A little bit of heavy snow and some blowing snow in there. Heavy on the trees. Really nice. It's kind of a weak signal up there, so you didn't get... There you go. There's some of that blowing snow. Yeah, they really, really need the moisture up this way. And so this is great news to see. I know it's not good for travel. Some of you might not like the wintry precip. I get it. But trust me, on the whole, this is a really, really good thing, because the water that gets dumped out there in the form of all that snow, the snowpack, that's a really good thing. It helps the economy, both in the short term with skiing and the tourism economy, etc., but also drinking water, water for animals, water for farming, water for humans, you name it. Believe me, this is a really, really important thing to see, and I'm glad to see it. I know it's inclement weather. It can inhibit travel, both from air, rail, shipping, trucks, you name it. But this is a good thing. Believe me, in the end, we want to see this. We don't want to have the West, bountiful with precip at the expense of the Southeast getting into drought. Anybody in drought, of course, has a problem, but this is definitely a good thing to see. So let's move this forward. This is the surface map with precip, etc. Blue is the frozen, green is the liquid, if you will. Sierra there, you see, very easy to spot with the high precipitation rates, mostly heavy snow there. So let's move this out into time, and you see what happens. This is, 60 hours out, so this is getting out to the 29th, so there's 72 hours out, and to the 30th. Low pressure after low pressure comes into the west coast. That one digs pretty far to the south. Look at that. Arizona. Nice. Rain in southern Arizona, northwest Mexico. Kind of unusual to see. Then you got the Arctic air up here coming out of Canada. And as we get towards the new year, these two should combine and give us our first shot at a significant winter storm there. This is last night's run of the GFS, the 0Z run. And this is about 150 hours out. We'll stop it at 168, which is about a week. So this is a week out. Pretty good Arctic air coming in behind it. Maybe some snows for the Appalachians. We flip the pattern a little bit. More troughiness east, more ridging in the west, maybe to start the new year. You can see that reflected in the jet stream pattern as well. See how that comes in. And we get out. There's 96, 120. Finally, at that same time frame, 168. More troughing in the east and more ridging out west, and there's that low pressure area, and that actually strengthens into quite the doozy of a storm. This is more than a week out, and just like with hurricanes, you never know. You gotta watch that one. That could be interesting. This is 180 hours out. It could not be there at all, just like we see with hurricanes, or I'm going to be making a trip up to the northeast in a little bit over a week's time. When is this? That's the 3rd. We'll see about that. I've got plans on the 4th that are very, very important. So maybe this can hold off just a couple days later or something, or a couple days earlier. Anyway, we'll be watching this. We'll talk about it. This would be basically next Monday, roughly, when I would be doing my first update of the new year. So we'll see. Maybe I have to do it early. Maybe it's going to be New Year's Day. We'll have to see. That's an interesting storm there. It's more than a week out. Don't want to get too excited about it. But you see how the jet stream does buckle, and we get more troughing, and that little storm explodes there. Wow, that's something else. Still too far out in time to really worry about. We'll keep an eye on it. I'm sure people will be discussing it on weather Twitter, as they say, and elsewhere. All right, convective season. It's hard to believe we're talking about this, but yeah, we are. The Gulf influencing it a little bit, again, with that flow coming around the high. And you get the moisture pumping up, and it does. It comes all the way around and influences everything. Big source of moisture. Out here, nothing related to the Gulf of Mexico, but some instability with our Pacific storm systems coming in. So keep an eye on that for today. Just garden variety, minor thunderstorm activity, nothing major. Day 2, going into tomorrow, when I'll travel today. I'll tell you about why in just a moment. A little bit more thunderstorm activity in parts of the deep south. And then day 3, it starts to get quite interesting, and especially since I'm going to be down here in this area. Slight risk there for day 3. So that's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. This would be Wednesday. So you guys keep an eye on that. I certainly will. Why am I going down there? What am I up to? No, I'm not going storm chasing, although it's like, if this gets upgraded to an enhanced, maybe I will. I'm working on additional episodes of the Hurricane Highway, our crowd-funded streaming series that I produce, and I got a lot of interviews I'm trying to get done. I'm several months behind. Life is just busy, with people not being able to do interviews because of COVID. The hurricanes of the 2021 season just all sorts of things. Plus, I do this generally by myself, and it just takes a while. But the end result, though, is a really interesting series, and it's a look back at what we do along this, metaphorical and very literal hurricane highway, trying to tell you the stories of what we did. And we're still talking 2020. I'm still working on those episodes. In fact, I just finished episode 5, Hurricane Isaias, and I'm posting that for our patrons who crowdfund this later tonight. So if you are a current patron, it'll be on Patreon tonight, and you can check that out. And in a couple of weeks, I'll make it available to the general public. Part of becoming a patron and supporting this effort, you get first access to this. The next episode, episode 6, is Laura, Hurricane Laura, and I'm going down to do some interviews and to kind of piece those story elements together. Not only Laura, but then there was Sally, there was Delta, there was Zeta, and then I got to talk to some people about Ida from this year. So I'm going to be busy. That's why I'm going to be traveling. I leave within the hour, and then I'll be back, I think, New Year's Eve. But that'll be interesting to see. I can't break away from my interviews and go up into Mississippi and Alabama and do any chasing, but we'll see. If it gets upgraded to enhanced, they're usually going to be at night. Ugh, that's the other problem. Anyway, I will be watching this. You watch that carefully as well. You know how these things can go. It can get nasty, and we need to pay attention to it. It's a few days out. I'll tweet about it, and the other people that you can follow along for reliable weather information, hurricane season and beyond. We're out there. You just got to look for us. I'm not the only one. You know that. So that's about it. All right. Have a good rest of your Monday. As always, thanks for tuning in and giving me a listen. Unless something changes, the next one of these will be a week from today, and that'll be January 23rd. Try again. January 3rd. Need cue cards like right in front of me. January 3rd, 2022. Got to get used to saying that already. Maybe earlier if that big storm starts to look like it's a reality, or if it's just a figment of the GFS's zeros and ones. Well, we'll just take things as they go, shall we? That's the best course of action. All right, have a great rest of your week. I am Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com. We'll talk again in the new year, if not before.